Hi, it's Grandpa from Grammy and Grandpa Read, and today's book is Leprechaun Gold. It's by Teresa Bateman and illustrated by Rosanne Litzinger. It's a Holiday House of New York book. So here we go. Donald Odell was a good-hearted man who could do a bit of anything if he put his hand to it. He took work where he found it and earned enough to keep food on the table and a roof over his head. He cared little for wealth and did not seek it. True, he lacked a wife and family. This caused him some sorrow, but there was time enough for starting a family in the future. Still, when he saw a wife give her husband a loving smile or a child grasp a father's hand, his heart felt an emptiness that the work could not fill. One day, as Donald was walking through a high meadow on his way home, he was startled to hear a cry for help. Hurrying toward the sound, he soon found himself by a fallen tree that bridged a bubbling stream. There, trapped in the water by the tree's branches, was a leprechaun. He must have been crossing the stream and slipped. Now the water slapped over the leprechaun's head, and between gasping for air and yelling for help, he was nearly spent. Donald Odell stepped out onto the key branch and snapped the leprechaun from the tree's grasp. The poor wee man was shivering and wheezing. Donald Odell shrugged out of his sweater and wrapped the leprechaun in its warm woolen folds. Then, tucking him under his arm, he hurried home. It was only a moment's work to kindle a fire and put a kettle on. Soon the leprechaun was sitting before the blaze, and his fingers curled around a steaming cup. "It's a kind-hearted man you are, entirely, Donald Odell," the leprechaun declared, "and you'll find me prosperly grateful. The saving of a leprechaun's life means a gift of leprechaun gold." If he expected that, however, the leprechaun was sorely disappointed. "I have enough for my needs," Donald replied. "You can keep the gold for yourself." The leprechaun was dumbfounded. Never before had a man refused leprechaun gold. He pleaded with Donald Odell, cajoled him, debated the issue, and finally demanded the man take the gold and be done with it. But Donald would not be swayed. Finally, the leprechaun prepared to leave. "But be assured," he told Donald Odell, "you'll accept the gold one way or another." The next morning, Donald found a pot of gold on the doorstep. He shook his head, carried it to the nearest fairy mound, and left it there. That afternoon, he reached for his coat, only to find the pockets weighed down with gold coins. He shrugged into the coat, walked to the fairy mound, and turned his pockets inside out. So it went on for the next week. Donald found gold everywhere he turned, in his shoes, pots, wagon, even his breakfast porridge. The path at the fairy mound soon grew well worn. Then the day arrived when Donald Odell went from dawn to dusk without seeing a single gold coin, barring that which he rightfully earned, rethatching a roof. "I expect the leprechaun has given up at last," he decided, feeling rather lonely. The next morning, however, Donald had other things to worry him. When he went to milk his cow, Letty, he found that the latch to the byre undone and the cow gone entirely. Even though he was sure he had latched the barn door securely the evening before, there was nothing for it. He snatched a rope and took off, following the animal's tracks as they led through the woods and meadows, hills and hollows. Indeed, he spent the whole day following after the beast. Night swept in with the evening rain, and Donald could no longer see the cow's tracks. It looked like he would have to spend a damp night in the dark woods. He sighed and was about to settle under a tree when an unexpected breeze whipped a branch across his chest, turning him to one side. From his new angle, he spied a light through the woods. Hurrying toward it, he soon saw it was a window, lamplit and warm. He pounded on the door. When it was opened, his mouth dropped open as well. Standing in the door was a beautiful woman. She smiled warmly and, glancing at the rope in his hand, said, "I don't suppose you might be the owner of that lovely cow that wandered into my barn just a few hours ago?" Dumbly, Donald nodded. The woman waved him inside. "It's cold. You must be. It's cold. You must be, and wet and worn out as well. Come away in and warm yourself by my fire. I'll feed you dinner, for your cow's already taken care of, and the two of you can spend the night in my barn." Delighted, Donald accepted her invitation. Over dinner, he discovered her name was Maureen, and she had lived there for several years, tending her old granny. Now Maureen was alone. Donald's heart was touched, but he found it hard to hear her words. Over the sound of the dripping water falling into the various pots and pans scattered over the floor. "It's the strangest thing," Maureen said. "The roof's been sound for years and nary a problem, but this evening, for some reason, it began leaking terribly. I expect I'll have to find someone with the skill to rehatch it for me, but I don't know how I'll afford it." "Ah," Donald Odell replied with a smile. "Consider the job done and paid in full, as well for your hospitality, the fine meal, and the good company. I'll do the rehatching for you for the morrow, and gladly." Maureen smiled, and that was that. That night, Donald Odell slept in the barn with Letty, and he was up at the crack of dawn fixing Maureen's roof. She hitched up her skirts and joined him. Oddly, the old thatch didn't look too bad. Still, by the time Donald Odell was finished, the only leak left was in his heart. He was taken entirely with Maureen. They courted for a month or two and then were wed. Donald Odell was happier than he had ever been before. "And not even Leprechaun Gold could have been better than this," he remarked to Maureen as they sat outside the cottage together. She hurried as the night grew cold, and Donald went to check the barn. "So are you happy?" came a small voice. I am that," Donald replied, upon discovering the leprechaun sitting on a railing in the byre. But it's surprised I am to see you. I thought I'd offended your honor by my refusal of the gold." The leprechaun smiled. "And do you think cows wander free and branches blow and roofs leak without a wee bit of help? You've been paid in full, Donald Odell, for the saving of my life." Donald looked puzzled. "I've taken no gold from you," he insisted. "There's more than one kind of gold in this world," the leprechaun said, tipping his hat. "It's away I'll be then," he continued. "Give my best to your bride, Maureen. She's a woman with hair of gold and a heart to match." And with a wink and a laugh, the leprechaun was gone. That's a good story. And what a good leprechaun, right? A lot of times the leprechauns are mean. Anyway, if you like this book, smash the like button down below, subscribe to our channel, give us a big thumbs up, and watch the playlist for St. Patrick's Day.